Good afternoon. We are receiving today at the MEDirections coffee break the two filmmakers of the film Happily Ever After. That is telling a very personal story and a very political story at the same time. Nada, what did you want to tell about your story?
Actually, the way it started was very different. When it started, it was very personal. We were dating and Ayman was out of the country and we were hitting a rough patch. We didn't know if we would continue as a couple. And that's how the film kind of started. It was me investigating long-distance relationship. I was doing preliminary interviews with a lot of couples who went through long-distance relationship. And initially, I thought I'd do a film about one or two of these couples. That's it. But when I interviewed my parents, who also had a lot of long distance in their relationship, I kind of realized that this is a lot more, that this is actually very much about this situation that we're in and how how everything that is happening in the country has affected our life and their lives as well.
Because actually the story is a lot. I mean, the context is very important. We're in Egypt. What was the period of the shooting in Egypt? What was the political situation there?
The film was shot in 2012 and 2013. Okay, so it was a region when the Muslim Brotherhood was in charge of the country.
Mm-hmm. And what was your feelings? I mean, it was the situation was closed for you. Why did you want to go away and not come back?
Well, in general, there were at that time there were a lot of signs that things are not going as we were expecting before. At the time of the first days of the revolution, there were deterioration, everything socially and politically. So, for example, even the simple things that we were used to do together, like walking at the Corniche in Alexandria, for example, it was not possible. Okay, there were a lot of harassers and there were a lot of people who were saying that you don't have to walk, for example, with a girl, okay, alone. So there were a lot of signs that things are not going well, okay, and I was afraid that my future as a filmmaker and my future as a person who wants to practice personal freedom cannot be done in this country anymore.
And what about you? Why did you want to stay then?
We always had different opinions when it comes to seeing the context. And back then, I thought that if you stay and if you walk with a girl on the beach, people will learn to accept it. And that if you leave, there is no chance for this exact thing to happen. And so back then, I was I wanted to stay because I wanted this life to be possible in Egypt. So that was simply by living, I guess, and practicing your personal freedom might acquire you that freedom.
Did she convince you, because you're now both living in Egypt and work in Egypt? Did she convince you? What convinced you now to stay and to make a future for yourself in Egypt?
Well, I think, of course, she convinced me, but I think also I was trying to lie at myself because, again, as a filmmaker, I can't make films about, for example, Italian people or French people. I have to make films about my people that I live with, okay, all my life. So it's very important to stay in Egypt and to make films. And I think the question also of staying or in Egypt or leaving Egypt is still valid until now. Okay, many people and many people from the young generation, okay, are still thinking about leaving Egypt forever. So I think also it's very important for us as filmmakers to stay and to establish our career in our country and to make films there.
And speaking about this very intimate telling you're doing in the film about your couple. I mean, the camera is present all the time. You're arguing, you're extremely transparent in your relationship. This is quite new in Egypt to show it outside in the public sphere. what it was your intent? Does it show something about this new generation of revolutionaries?
I don't, again, because this film had a life of its own, it changed over time a lot. So I think my intentions have changed, like growing through this film. I would say the same about you if I could. And yes, partially it was about like how we depict the personal and discuss it, and how we are, like, if we are claiming that we want change, maybe personal change is the best way to discuss the entire context. Like, it's just simply, again, by putting our own choices out there and being transparent with an audience and seeing how they would react, like how would they reflect their own relationships and their own decisions watching the film. Like.
And you are less inclined to show your feelings. Maybe it's like you're less inclined to show it on with the camera. You've been convinced because it's also a political issue. And do you think what kind of like the audience would get in Egypt?
Of course, I was a little bit resistant from Sudan because the film was shot in a very decisive moment in my life. Okay, I was finishing my Master of Fine Arts degree in cinema abroad, and I have to finally decide if I will come back to Egypt or to stay abroad forever.
But the political, is it something political at the end for you to show also something that is very personal, and you don't look to be very inclined to show your personal feelings in the movie? You can say it.
I think this genre, if I say genre of personal film, is not new in films and in cinema in general, but it's pretty new in the region for filmmakers to tell personal stories that intersect with the broader social and political context. And if I'm speaking of Egypt in general, I think the revolution motivated also many filmmakers to tell their personal story in an honest way. So I think we are part of that generation, we are part of that movement that try also to tell honest stories about themselves, but also in the same time to find a common ground with the audience, okay, and to try to reach audience also for them to question their lives and their conflicts and their personal relationships as well.
So to conclude, there's been a kind of small cultural revolution?
Yes, of course. It's been a very eye-opening experience for, I guess, the Egyptian people in general. Like one day, it was possible to walk in the street and like have a discussion with someone who I felt extremely like I am extremely the opposite of, but to have these walls like kind of torn and these discussions have, I guess it's changed a lot the texture of the society itself. Yes, this might not be very easy to detect right now, but I think it has already happened in a way that there are some bridges that were built there, even if we are not entirely reaching our exact hopes and dreams but it's still a change that is impossible to ignore.
Well, we can't be always happy ever after, let's say. Thank you very much, Nada. Thank you very much, Ayman, for your time.
Thank you so much for having us.